My personal experience with the project comes from being a community member in New York. It's a dense city. I see problems that I think need to be solved all the time.
New York was hit hardest by the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and continued to be sort of like a landmark of where AIDS grew and became truly an epidemic. The idea for the project got started when Michael and I were working together, and we had started doing a lot of research on the fact there were these modern prophylactic methods that could be used to prevent HIV and AIDS transmission among people who were susceptible to HIV and AIDS. And so, but what we found was that these drugs were being largely rejected by community leaders out of fear that it would lead to a decrease in condom usage and an overall increase in HIV/AIDS transmission.
Truvada is this drug that can prevent HIV if it's used properly. It's fairly new to the market, FDA approved. It's being tested in micro communities and larger communities, and it is very effective.
And we found, depending on which study you look at, it's between 49 and 99% effective against preventing HIV transmission. I'm a writer, and Michael is a designer. And so what we did is we created this project to say these modern prophylactic methods, if used appropriately, could potentially lead to what is the last HIV generation.
It seemed like a good opportunity to say, hi, there are people that care. There are people that are curious about this drug. There are people that are curious about the ways it's being used. There are people who have been affected by the virus in so many deep ways. It seemed like a valuable challenge to me as an art director, and an interesting branding assignment. What does this look like? What's a mark that can iconify the subject of acceptance or like mass change, the removal of an epidemic, the eradication of an epidemic, and just that visual assignment is really stimulating to me.
For 30 years, we have lived in fear of HIV. It has taken our family members, friends, and community leaders. It has at times sapped us of our own will to live, robbed us of gratitude for the good fortune we've encountered, drained us of our empathy. The spread of the disease now is rooted in an ignorance of its causes, prevention, and treatment. Too often, those of us in the know, friends, lovers, family members, feel powerless, rationalizing that only the remedies of professionals carry weight. We undervalue the impact even a small gesture of support can have upon the psyche of the suffering.
We went around the streets of New York on a February afternoon, and we asked people to write letters or write a message to someone they know who had been affected by HIV or AIDS. And what we found was people had been very powerfully affected. But through the notes that they wrote, people had known people who had died. They had close friends, they had lovers, they had family members who had died on account of HIV and AIDS. And it really kind of told a story through each person as they were writing these letters and as they were doing it. And we had them put them in a time capsule that the idea was that we would bury this time capsule and it'll be opened in a generation that is free of HIV and AIDS.
I asked some guy in Union Square if he knew anybody, and he just looked at me and he said, "You can't really, I've got this thing I gotta do." And I mean, I do. And he just started crying. And he was just like, he wasn't weeping at me. He wasn't crying. It was containing himself, but he just started crying. I did this thing because I am a designer, an art director. I want to solve problems as a creator. I want to create solutions. When I had that interaction with that guy, it reminded me that we were doing something that impacted people, and that it made me think a lot more sensitively about the project, and that I was having an effect on people, and that I needed to respect them and respect the subject. Well, other people were just silent and picked up the pen, knew exactly what to do, and started writing, and the messages were totally impassioned and very sweet, and they thanked us for the time, and we thanked them for the time, and more often than not, it was a very organic exchange, and people who were affected needed it, is what it felt like.
Say hi to Johnny.
We wanted to create a conversation around HIV and AIDS as it exists today, and not as it existed in the 80s or the 90s when it was a more prevalent epidemic, but as it still exists today as a more overlooked epidemic. We wanted to bring the conversation back to the idea of this is still something that is causing people hardship and causing people heartache and killing people. Now that we're finally burying this capsule, now we actually have to move forward. Now we have to push forward these modern prophylactic methods that exist towards preventing HIV and AIDS. And we very strongly believe we can actually make this the last generation of HIV.
The scale is massive. There's so many people in the world that we shot this video in New York. It's not just New York. It's a global epidemic, and I don't know how to treat that scale. But the fact that there's any hope available, it shouldn't be looked down upon. It should be really carefully inspected and supported by governments. It should be tested rigorously, and it should be accepted by people who have already been made a victim in a sense, either small or large. It should be explored. It'd be nice, right? It'd be nice.